Hello guys, my name is Omar Ahmed and welcome to Unscripted. I wanted to make a video on cryptocurrencies and the many people that are going to prison because of it. But pagers exploded in Lebanon and that takes precedence. Is this a new form? Is this modern cyber warfare? Or has it been around for a long time? But even more important is understanding who is behind it. Like always, this video is also unscripted. I'm just doing it offhand. Unlike the previous one, I don't even have notes because this is an emergency. It's like breaking news. So in a few hours ago, reports emerged that several pagers exploded in Lebanon, all over Lebanon, and injured over 2,500 people. More than 8 people were killed, and the reports keep coming in. In other words, we should expect to hear that more people have been killed and even more will be injured as a result. But I know you're asking, what's a pager? For people living in the 21st century, or rather, the pagers have been around for some time, okay? And with the emergence of mobile phones and especially smartphones, they somehow completely disappeared. But military groups and clandestine organizations have been using them, hoping they will be enough to encrypt their activities and prevent their enemies from locating them. And this is because pagers are disconnected from the internet. They use, I believe, infrared signals, and they are on a completely different frequency than the internet. So since they are not on the internet, several groups thought these things could not be compromised. Now, there are many opinions coming in from experts as to how this took place. But what is clear is that it was a targeted attack against the members of Hezbollah. Because Hezbollah is an organization that has been fighting Israel on the shores, or rather borders of Lebanon, which has led to over 60,000 Israelis that have occupied parts of the West Bank to evacuate. Now, Israel has been pushing and trying to force Hezbollah back in order for these 60,000 evacuated occupiers to return to their homes. Is it even correct to call it homes? Because they took it by force. Their government took it by force and gave it to them. That's a conversation for another day. Regardless, our focus here is on this attack on Hezbollah. But Hezbollah is like an offshoot organization. It's like a proxy organization. It's a proxy military group that's controlled, funded, and trained by the Iranians. So they are like a proxy military. They are like a proxy Iranian military. Whatever they do is determined by Iran. In fact, their pagers come all the way from Iran. In just a few months, the Iranian people connected to the Iranian government have been attacked via explosives. The most recent one before this incident is Ismail Haniyeh, the leader of Hamas, who was assassinated via an explosive that was planted in the residence he was living in Tehran, the capital of Iran. And Hezbollah are completely reliant on the goodwill, supervision, training, and financial support of Iran. Now, Iran always appears as a country that fights against Western occupation and colonialism. This is because the Shia government that came into power in 1979 and has continued until now has always posed itself as an axis of resistance. So it has always seen itself as one of the major countries fighting Western hegemony, especially American Raj in the Middle East. It sees itself as a representative of the Shia movement and Muslims at large because it believes it is defending the religion of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, anyone with any political wit will tell you that all the actions that Iran has been carrying out for the past 3-4 decades have always been positive to the United States of America. Iran only takes actions that appear to be against the United States when it suits America's objectives. In 2015, Bashar al-Assad of Syria was about to fall, yet Iran intervened and rescued him. And this came after Obama announced in a UN meeting that they will be welcoming, they are ready to welcome countries, even like countries like Russia and Iran, even though they are publicly regarded as American enemies. This gave the way for both Iran and Russia to enter the war. Why Russia entered the war is simply because it thought the US would leave Ukraine to it. But that's a topic for another day as well. But Iran was allowed into the war by the US because it has always been controlled in terms of its foreign policy by the United States of America. Also, Iran might have thought that the US would ease on the sanctions that it has placed on it, meaning the sanctions and embargo it has emplaced, that the US has emplaced on the Iranian economy, which has pressured and been squeezing the Iranian economy and making life hard for the people there. But of course, it was naive simply because the US needs Iran to continue being a pariah state, meaning a country, a state, a nation that the US will always use as a reason to be militarily present in the Middle East, and by extension, to militarily support and defend Israel through supplying it with weapons and even actively and physically being there with its own warships. When the war in Gaza, or rather the invasion and the massacre of Gaza started after October 7, the US quickly moved its warships to the waters close to that area, just so that they are sure that Iran would not move. Of course, it is true that Iran is a fierce enemy of Israel, but their competition revolves around how Iran wants to be the most important child that America cares about. And Israel is the regional competitor of Iran because the US needs either Iran, Saudi Arabia, or Israel to serve as its proxy military presence in the Middle East. Coming back to the main topic of our conversation, we can see now that Hezbollah is tightly allied with a country that serves the interests of the United States of America. And the United States of America is supposedly an enemy of Hezbollah. Now, relying on such a country appears a bit irrational, I would say, But the main point here is not that it is merely tied to Iran, but the fact that Israel, who has been accused by Hezbollah for carrying out this attack, it's actually capable of carrying out these attacks. But since these devices are not connected to the internet, as everyone knows, how were they able to carry out the attack? And in case I haven't mentioned, several people, especially from Hezbollah and the ministries in Lebanon, are pointing their fingers at Israel, and Israel hasn't said anything to deny the allegations. I would dare say they are not merely allegations, they are accusations, and Israel is known for not commenting on attacks it has carried out. And I strongly believe that Israel was behind this. Now, the most important thing to notice, though, is that in addition to the attacks in Palestine, Gaza, Israel has been carrying out attacks that has hit parts of Lebanon. And of course, Hezbollah is incapable of actually defending that land simply because it is not a fully fledged military. But the main reason of this video, of this live stream, of the Unscripted, it's to simply point out that Israel is the open enemy that we know. But we need to understand that politics isn't simply about the open enemy. On the one side, we have Israel as the open enemy, carrying out attacks on behalf of the United States of America against Muslims all over the Middle East, especially in Gaza and Lebanon and Lebanon, and mind you, even in Syria. But on the other side, we have Iran, countries like Iran and Saudi Arabia, especially Iran, pretending to be on the side of Islam and Muslims, pretending to be standing against Israel. Okay, just to be clear, it is against Israel, but not because it actually cares about what Israel is doing. Iran is a country that takes advantage of what's happening in the Muslim world to gain power for itself. And Israel keeps giving it ammunition. And of course, it is widely believed that it is evident that Iran supports most military organizations that emerge out of the Middle East, even if they are not Shia organizations. Why? The reason is simple. It needs to keep itself relevant. And the US is happy with Iran doing that. Because if Iran doesn't behave that way, the US wouldn't have a reason to be present in the Middle East. This is the same tactics it uses with North Korea. The US allows North Korea to exist. And many people actually think that North Korea is striking fear in the hearts of the United States. And the US media keeps making noise about how dangerous North Korea is time to time. But the reality is, yes, North Korea is backed and supported by China, and the US doesn't control North Korea. That's true. However, the US can invade and disarm North Korea of its military and nuclear weapons before it takes any meaningful step. But the US doesn't actually want to do that. Of course, if it does that, it will mean war with China in the Far East Asia region. But even if it could, it is strategically not wise, strategically and politically not wise for the US, because North Korea carrying out all these provocative activities and military exercises is good for the US. That's the way the US justifies its military presence. Hence, when Donald Trump was president, it became very obvious to many that have not even realized it for long that the US would provoke North Korea in order to re- in order to remind people why US military has to be in the East Asian Sea, South China Sea, essentially, that area where the Far East Asia, essentially. So it's the same role, a very similar role that Iran plays. And of course, Iran has its own personal interests, but its interests always seem to align with the interest of the United States of America. So Iranian interest is simple. It wants to be a regional leader. It wants to be able to supply, to export its resources freely. But its loyalty to the United States of America means it cannot do anything that goes against the interest of the US. And some of the experts actually believe the pagers that exploded all across Lebanon were compromised through the supply chain. The supply chain itself, which comes directly from Iran, was compromised. And I keep pointing to the assassination of Haniyeh, the former leader of Hamas, how it happened within Iran, in the capital city. And we are still waiting for the fierce response that Iran has promised. And we all know how Iranian responses are. And they always announce it, the date, and all the variables, information needed to protect against such attacks. But the closing remark I will make here is for us, all of us, to understand that Iran is but one country that has proven treacherous against the Muslim Ummah repeatedly. But it is not only Iran, it's all the Muslim countries surrounding Palestine. But it's all the Muslim, Arab or not leaders that have sold the Ummah out. And they continue to do so. This latest attack on Lebanon, it is a high level and a very ridiculous intrusion by the Israelis, but you can only think it is ridiculous, honestly, you can only think it is ridiculous if you do not appreciate or rather understand that the Muslim leaders are the first line of defense for the Israelis. Because how could Israel be surrounded by over 50 million Muslims? It is surrounded by Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Iran, Saudi Arabia, or even Egypt, all these Muslim countries. Yet it is capable of killing Muslims simply because artificial lines have been drawn by Sykes-Picot in 1916, which says that this is Saudi, this is Misra, this is Egypt essentially, or this is Tunisia, or this is Syria, or this is Jordan, or this is Lebanon. So nationalism came into it. All these artificial nationalistic borders have been used as excuses by Muslim leaders not to intervene and protect their Muslim brothers and sisters. But trust me, if the US wants them to do so, they will do so. Just look at Iran in Syria. Is Syria a part of Iran? But why is Iranian military active in Syria? If you look at the UAE, why is it that there are evidences of UAE weapons and even military found in Sudan? Is Sudan part of the UAE? If we are talking about nationalism, they are not. So this, we should be mindful of the statements these Muslim leaders make and the and how much they are trying to further reinforce the nationalistic point of view. We are Muslims, and al-Muslimu akhul Muslim. The Muslim is the brother of another Muslim. It is important that we stand for our brothers. We must care for them wherever we are from. Every single one of us has a role to play. No matter how small it is more than nothing. And the least a person can do is raise awareness about what's happening in the world, so that when the Muslim Ummah finally wakes up to do something, it will do so with awareness and not misguidance.